Hello! Today let's talk about Mao Zedong's two brothers, Mao Zemin and Mao Zetan. They are not as famous as their elder brother, but they also played important roles in the Chinese Communist Revolution, and both died tragically. Their stories offer an emotional family backdrop to Mao Zedong's rise to power. Mao Zedong's parents had many children, but only 3 survived into adulthood. The eldest was Mao Zedong, born in 1893. The second eldest was Mao Zemin, who was born 3 years later. In 1911, at only 14 years old, Mao Zemin married his first wife, Wang Shulan. He also took home most of the household responsibilities. He managed the family farm in the village and supported his elder brother's education. When Mao Zedong was studying in Changsha, Mao Zemin periodically traveled there to bring him supplies: rice, flour, clothes. He always came dressed like a peasant, so much so that Mao Zedong's classmates assumed that he was a hired laborer. They had no idea that he was the younger brother. Here's a story from one of those visits. Once, Mao Zemin arrived a few days late, and Mao Zedong was furious. He scolded his younger brother for the delay. Mao Zemin didn't argue. He quietly helped clean the room. Only as he was leaving did he explain that the harvest that year had been very poor and that he had to travel through several towns to buy the rice. By the early 1920s, Mao Zemin had followed Mao Zedong into the communist movement and quickly rose through the ranks. But that also meant that he was attracting growing attention from the Kuomintang authorities. In 1927, in order to protect his wife and young daughter, Mao Zemin made a painful choice. He filed for divorce and left them behind. They would live to see the day the communists took power in China, but they would never see Mao Zemin again. With no family to protect, Mao Zemin threw himself fully into the revolution. He went to Shanghai and helped run the party's underground publishing network. After that, in the early 1930s, he joined his elder brother in Jiangxi Soviet and was appointed finance minister. He created the Red Army's first bank, printed its currency, and managed tax reforms. In those years, Mao Zemin was effectively the revolution's money man, the one who made sure that the Red Army had food, ammunition, and pay. When the Long March began in 1934, Mao Zemin was tasked with logistics and supply. After the troops arrived in Yan'an, he became the head of the local Ministry of Economy. In mid-1939, as Mao Zemin's health was deteriorating, the party sent him to the Soviet Union for medical treatment. On his way back in early 1940, he stopped in Xinjiang, which was then ruled by the warlord Shen Shikai. Shen, who was aligned with communist ideologies, asked the communists to lend him finance experts. So for a few years, Mao Zemin acted as Xinjiang's de facto finance chief. But in 1942, Shen Shikai decided to end his alliance with the communists. That September, Mao Zemin was arrested along with dozens of others. He spent a year in prison, where he was seriously tortured. On the night of September 27, 1943, he was secretly executed. His family life was no less turbulent. After divorcing his first wife, Wang Shulan, Mao Zemin married twice more. His second marriage was to a Red Army comrade named Qian Xijun. It was short-lived. They had no children. His third wife was Zhu Danhua, a well-educated communist revolutionary 16 years younger than him. They met during his time in Xinjiang. In 1941, they had a son, Mao Yuanxin. After Mao Zemin's arrest, Zhu Danhua and the son were also imprisoned. But thankfully, they were eventually liberated. Decades later, their son Mao Yuanxin would become one of his uncle Mao Zedong's most important aides during the final years of the Cultural Revolution. Now let's talk about the youngest brother, Mao Zetan. He was born in 1905, 12 years after Mao Zedong. If Mao Zedong was the charismatic political leader and Mao Zemin the meticulous financial planner, then Mao Zetan was the fierce, idealistic fighter. In 1921, when Mao Zedong returned to his home village for a visit, the 16-year-old Mao Zetan was captivated. He soon joined the Communist Revolution. In 1927, he participated in the Nanchang Uprising as a soldier. That's the first major armed revolt by the communists. After that, he marched with Zhu De's forces to the Jinggang Mountains, which was basically a guerrilla base loyal to Mao Zedong. In October 1934, when his two elder brothers, Mao Zedong and Mao Zemin, embarked on the Long March, the courageous Mao Zetan stayed behind. For 6 months, he led a small guerrilla force to sabotage the Kuomintang armies in order to buy time for the larger troops. But eventually, he was hunted down. On April 26, 1935, Mao Zetan was killed. He was 29. Mao Zetan's death devastated Mao Zedong. When he heard of the news, he said, "When my mother was still alive, she once called me to her bedside and reminded me to take good care of my little brother. I failed to live up to my responsibility as the eldest son." Mao Zetan's personal life was also very turbulent. In 1924, he married his first wife, Zhao Xiangui, but they divorced after less than 2 years. In 1926, he married his second wife, Zhou Wennan, a fellow communist activist in Changsha. She soon became pregnant. But during her pregnancy, Mao Zetan left her to pursue armed revolts against the Kuomintang. His departure didn't mean safety. Zhou and their newborn son were soon arrested by the authorities. Although they were eventually released, they would never see Mao Zetan again. By the way, their son's name was Mao Chuxiong. He later joined the communist forces in Yan'an. In 1946, he was captured by the Kuomintang and was buried alive. He was only 19 years old. Okay, back to Mao Zetan. After losing contact with his second wife, he remarried in Jiangxi, this time to a girl named He Yi, who was the younger sister of Mao Zedong's wife, He Zizhen. So Mao Zetan became Mao Zedong's brother-in-law, in addition to being his brother. He Yi gave birth to their son, He Lucheng, around the time of the Long March. After Mao Zetan's death, He Yi was forced to flee and entrusted the baby to relatives. The baby's son wouldn't learn who her real parents were until 1949. In the grand story of Mao Zedong's revolution, the names of Mao Zemin and Mao Zetan often go unnoticed. But they were there through the toughest battles. They gave Mao Zedong everything they had, including their lives. Thank you so much for watching this video. See you next time.